Hi everyone, this is Ceitci and I am the founder and CEO of Changing a Generation. And today I have an encouraging word for you found in Joshua chapter 3, 4, and 5. And at that particular time, Israel was getting ready to finally cross over after 40 years of traveling in the wilderness and possess their promised land. And interestingly enough, right after they saw so many miracles on their way through the Jordan River and onto the other side, they were faced with the big city called Jericho that was such a big fortress, and it looked like the biggest impossibility that they had to face right off the bat as they were getting ready to settle in their new promise. And the way God instructed them to take over the city is by marching around with praise and worship 7 times until they saw the walls of Jericho crumbling down. When I read some of the historical aspects of that time, it was showing me that on the 7th round, while they were marching and praising God and claiming their victory, that a big earthquake happened and took down the walls of Jericho. And right after they were coming into the city, the Israelites were instructed not to leave anybody alive, but to kill everyone. You think that is a brutal instruction by God. But I want to look at it from a spiritual aspect, that many times when we cross into a new promised land that God is speaking to us and we're finally there and we're seeing that there are new giants, that our battle is not over just because we finally crossed into a promise that we have been praying and asking God for it, that there is going to be a new giant in that new land. However, we have been already given authority over the promised land that God has already spoken into our life. But here is the key. You're going to hear voices from the wilderness speaking into your life because not everybody crossed over. Some people died in the wilderness in that particular story. And in our life is the same way. Just because you cross over into a promise and you're experiencing God's grace for that promise, not everybody is on your page. You're going to hear the voices of fear, the voices of discouragement, the voices of confusion, the voices of poverty, the voices that are trying to keep you in bondage. And I want you to think today which voice prevails in your mind, because whoever the main voice you're hearing and obeying is going to be the leading voice in your life. So do not allow the voices of the wilderness to speak to your promise in your present right now where you're at. Continue to declare God's victory. I remember the time in Bulgaria after communism fell, a new level of persecution broke out against the church, that we were supposed to just succumb to the new rules, to the new oppression by the government and close everything down. They would send journalists inside of our churches to expose what we were believing. And I remember one time that the journalists were going to write these horrible articles about us and our Christian faith, and they decided to join us for a service. But God gave us a different strategy. He told us to jump in our cars, as many as we could get in each car, and start driving around and start speaking forth the word of God in victory over our city. We started praising God, we started praying. It was several cars, and we drove around 7 times, just like the children of Israel did at that time. And we were believing that our city is going to come to know the Lord, that officials are going to come to know the Lord, that revival was going to break out. Guess what happened? The next day, the big article that came out in the newspaper was on the front page, and it said, "We tried to stop them, but they're showing that they're unstoppable." I want you to remember that the power of God that resides inside of you is greater than any party out there, than any communist party, than any regime, than any structure that this world is trying to put upon the church. You're the one that's on the victorious side, so exercise your level of authority. We have responsibility in this day and in this hour to stand up for truth to not compromise our beliefs, and to speak to whatever walls we call around us. They may be like the walls of Jericho, untouchable and unmovable, but I am telling you, the prayer of the righteous avails much, and it is our prayer, it is our praise, it is our worship that brings any bondage around us down and brings people to new liberation and freedom in their life. So continue to speak forth the word of God, stay encouraged, because we win at the very end.